Mheshimiwa Ndindi Nyoro, who is our chief guest, to move his address.
Thank you very much. Tunaweza keti tafadhali. Our senior pastor, Reverend Kimathi, and all the other clergy who are here this morning for CBF. Our main guest, Dr. Wale, my brother, our MP for Nyeri Town, Mheshimiwa DMM, and of course Mrs. Maina, the organizers of this very well-organized event, led by my brother Ken Kiora, and all the other organizers who some I have met, actually in my office earlier, and all the participants of this forum, this breakfast, and this two-day conference. Good morning. Habari yenu? Muriega? Asante sana. I am very pleased to come here this morning, and especially as a businessman, more than a politician, because we are here to share about business, entrepreneurship, creating value. I am sure there are other forums for the other hat that I wear in terms of politics. And I am at home completely, because I keep saying that anytime I am reading or interacting in any issue around investments, about business, about entrepreneurship, I feel like I am in holiday. So this morning I have come for holiday here in Nyeri, because talking about money is not something very bad. It is something good. And I want to laud the church, CITAM, for giving us this opportunity as business people, because it is one of the avenues God can bless many of us as Christians. And you know, many of us from Mashinani who were brought up in the village, in a Spartan life, conservative life, I'm an Anglican. To some extent, we may think that talking about money is going off. But I'm glad that every now and then we keep being reminded that even when you read about the Old Testament, God could bless his people even with great wealth, and it is recorded. And therefore, business is one of the ways that God can choose to bless us, and that is our domain this morning. But you allow me, because I am also a representative of the people of Kiharu and Kenya in terms of Parliament, National Assembly. I can hear there are some people from Kiharu here. Asante sana. It is important, I mentioned just in 2 minutes because it is important. In Kiharu, I am glad to be an MP there, and I'm sure, and I am glad even Honorable DMM has been there. Kiora has been there. And I talk about this because when any part of Kenya develops, then Kenya is developing. When any part of Kenya decelerates, then also Kenya is going backwards. So in Kiharu, through NGCDF of Kiharu, it's a very large constituency. Actually, in terms of landmass, it could be only second from Kieni. We have around 112 public primary schools. 112 public primary schools. And I want to assure you, some of you who follow us on social media, the way they are, all our public primary schools, they are well done, well built, where we needed to build new structures. Where there are old structures, all our classrooms are tiled as a representation of all the other work done. When I say tiling, it's representing all the other overhaul of the work. Also, we have started like 7 new day schools from scratch. But lastly, the program that I'm very proud about is a program we run touching learners in day secondary schools, which we have around 65, including the ones we've started. And we have around 12,500 learners in those day schools in Keharu. In Keharu, what we've done is to do what is called backward aggregation. So we have consolidated the amount of budgets our day schools run, and then we try to work out a modality of lessening the burden for learners. So this is the outcome. The outcome is that of all the learners in our day secondary schools in Keharu, we subsidize the education through CDF and other mechanisms, and learners in Keharu only pay 1,000 shillings per term in any day secondary school. And where there is remedial teaching, because we would also encourage that, we don't actually permit in excess of 1,000 in the schools where there is remedial. And in that 1,000, learners eat in school from Monday up to Saturday. And they don't eat together every day. We alternate some rice, some this, some that, some that. And in the last Friday of the month in Keharu, all day schools, the last Friday of the month, they actually eat chapati for lunch. Including last Friday, which was the last Friday of the month. We do this because we know the primacy of education in shaping society from the household level going upwards. We have also invested over 20 million shillings in buying of revision books for those day schools. We are building laboratories. We are building halls in terms of deepening knowledge and education. I have mentioned that because it is important. It is important because this year alone, because we have 2 sub-counties in Keharu, it's large. We have over 2,000 students who have come from other areas in Kenya to live with their relatives so that they school in our day schools. And I'm very proud about that. Because we don't ask for ID ya mzazi. Ati tuonyeshe mzazi ni wa hapa, anapiga kura hapa. Once you join our day secondary school, what you are looking for is knowledge. You'll become a voter later. Our business now is education, not about where the parent votes. Let me come back now to the meeting. I'll try to compress so that I actually take less time than I was allocated, so that we can have a time where we can interact with all, even the chief guest. We are here as business people. We are here as entrepreneurs. We are here as investors. But sometimes do you quip to ask yourself, what is the difference? What are you? Because there must be a reason why in the dictionary there is a different word for being a businessman, for being an entrepreneur, for being an investor. Because if it meant the same, then it will be one word or one definition. So this morning, we need to trace ourselves so that we find whether we are in the right locus. But then we know that Nyoro'S is a politician. Why was he invited? In brief, I actually started business earlier than politics, because in class 6 I had my first kiosk, class 6. And I'm not telling you those stories of I started a big farm with an apple or no. That's not what I'm doing. Out of necessity, from a mud house, from a father who was living in Kiadutu slums in Thika, and a peasant farmer mother, And in a family where the only person who had a car was my uncle, maternal actually, after studying my uncle's life, I actually saw that he never progressed with education so much. So I thought I can take a shortcut like my uncle. Hakuna haja ya kujichosha na masomo. He was driving a KUI. He had never been to high school. So I started my first kiosk. And I could go buy some shopping. Hapo nyumbani kwetu kwa fence, nikakata nikaeka ka kiosk, asanti. But of course in class 6, when you have 200 bob in your pocket, there is nothing a mathematics teacher can tell you. So because I could not listen very keenly, my education ikaanza kwenda chini, ama grades. And my godmother, mwenye alinisimamia nikipatizwa, was my teacher and my village mate called Mrs. Karanja. So at the time wakati my father came from Kiadutu, he used to come over weekends. Kamwambia, your son is good, lakini masomo inaleta shida kwa sababu ya duka. So my father forced me to liquidate, but he was kind enough to actually pay me for the entire stock, which was just around 600 shillings. Then I progressed, nikamaliza hapo. Nikaenda Kiabugi Secondary School. It's just neighboring our place. And I'm saying this because it was more out of necessity. From my first year, hapo, Form 1, nikaanza kuwa cobra wa kushona viatu. And those who are there can attest. These are not stories where we only give as politicians. This is real stories. So I started mending shoes, progressed later into running school kiosk. School kiosk was being run by clubs, drama club, science club, officials. So I made sure I vied to be an official in almost all the clubs, so that I ran the canteen uninterrupted, so that we could buy some bread for the club, and of course some for ourselves to get the profit, and then to make the ends meet. Later on in my third year, my Form 3, Form 4, my elder sister had a mutumba in Thika. Maybe that's where I got the courage ya kuongea mbele ya watu sana. Because in my over holiday I used to go to Thika. Pahali inaitwa Mukereti, wenye mnajua Thika. Saa hii kumejengwa manyumba mrefu. But before it was a market. So I used to sell mutuba there. Kumikumi ni baobao, bei ni ya kufunga. Nguo za watoto especially I used to sell. University, when I was joining KU, I had 2 goals. One was to deepen my leadership, but number 2 is to expand in terms of business. So when I joined KU, my first year, first help, I paid for my school fees for the whole year for KU. But the second semester help in the same first year, I, number 1, started a kiosk. Those who are from KU, you know KM. I started a hotel there, and I called it Vatican Cave. But, and I remember one time, it was Valentine's Day, we had gone to buy sufurias with the person I had borrowed some money ya kuanza hiyo kahoteli. That guy is called Wamwere, now he's in the UK. And we had gone to buy sufurias in Gekoba for that hotel of mine. Then, Wamwere told me I have a girlfriend, alikuwa nauza phone accessories along Rudhuri Avenue. Since gari za KU ziko tu hapo karibu, matatu, tukaenda tukisalimia girlfriend ya Wamwere. When we reached there carrying sufurias, the lady was looking at us like she does not even know us. Later on, Wamwere was dumped. This was the main reason. Kwa council ya wazee, this was the main reason. Number one, we didn't know it was Valentine's Day. So, he ought to have gone to see the girlfriend in a different manner. But number 2, Wamwere had already told the girlfriend that he's doing a degree KU ya teaching na some economics uko katikati. So the lady was wondering, hii ni B.Ed gani na economics gani watu wananunua sufuria? Kwani ni home science? So of course we started that ka business na tukafanya hapo. The classmates used to come eat. After eating they tell me tuonane class. And they know I used to skip a lot of classes because of that ka hotel. So out of my classmates who are here, I'll tell the chief if he's around, you made my hotel collapse. Then the same year, because I was determined nikitoka mashinani, mi naenda first of all to polish my leadership but also to look for money. Yo ikaanguka hoteli. The same semester, I decided to vie as a student leader in my first year as Congress person in the School of Humanities in KU then. So I vied, lost by 4 votes. Then I was wondering, I think nitaacha hii kiberebere because hoteli imeanguka, ndio hii politics ya hapo shule ni kama nimeanguka pia. There is something that happened in my second semester in KU. My sister, anaitwa Esther, came to visit. I think she was the first person relative to visit me in campus. You know, sisi watu wa hiyo age, kitoka mashinani now you become a breadwinner. Sio kupiga simu utumiwe pesa, ni wewe utume help. So my sister came to visit, elder sister. I was so broke. I had started a hotel through my help and some borrowing from Wamwele, it had collapsed. I had vowed to be a student leader, I hadn't made it. We were so broke tukienda kumaliza semester, we could barely afford a meal. So with my friend Jemo, who was either my roommate or next, hapo tu karibu, he was one of my best friends. So my sister came to visit, brought us meat, nyama, and we were so broke. Then we decided with Jemo, tukifanya hesabu ya kwenye semester imebakia, kula nyama inatuumiza. So we decided to sell the meat. so that we can push some days kukura ugali na madodo. So that first semester, long vacation. Hapa unamaliza mwaka uende second year. Of course me I had decided sirudi mashinani. So my uncle akanipea kanyumba hapo Lang'ata. I used to go mguu mpaka town. Nikapata some internship in the Ministry of Trade. But then when I was loitering around, I decided my former MP called Genye Kariuki niende nikamtoanisha kitu. So I was, you know, wakati yo comrade, I was saa hiyo nimematch kiatu ya black, of course iko na vubi, na trouser ya black na shati ya black. Sasa unajiona umematch ile mbaya. Na nimebeba bahasha as usual. Sijui kwa nini, when you are a student in campus or after you finish, you always carry a CV as a default setting. So I was carrying a brown envelope, was going to my former MP's office, but I was going there kumuonyesha he can rely on me in terms of kura za mayouths, so that anipatie kitu, inipatie fare ya kukaa Nairobi. So nikapata a meeting. I was told you can leave your CV, but I was not going there to look for a job. I was going there to look for money, cheap money. Then later on, he called me within that week, and I went to his office. And akaniuliza, kijana ulikuwa unatafuta kazi? Kamwambia, yes sir. When do you want to start? Today sir. Nikaanza kazi hapo ya stock broking. The reason I've given all that background is because I do stock broking up to today. And that is the basis where I learned investments. Raw investments, especially in the Nairobi Securities Exchange. So whatever you read about Kenya Power, that is the genesis of me buying shares. I'm sure some of you have read something about it. In terms of investing in Kenya Power, investing in the Nairobi Securities Exchange, that is my genesis. Later on, of course, started an IT company. We now, as politicians, we may not go into details, but I do business in IT, in financial services, majorly IT and financial services. Hiyo I think was ibaki hapo. So business, you are a businessman. What's the distinction between a businessman and an entrepreneur? A businessman seeks to expand the business they are doing. My brother here is in oil industry. As a businessman, you are looking at how many gas stations or fuel stations we will have. An entrepreneur becomes more innovative and branches further from just deepening the business they are doing in terms of extracting more from it into being creative and innovative to venture into other sectors. So you could actually pass and say, a businessman seeks to expand whatever they know. An entrepreneur now goes further, even beyond what they know. Na mimi nikiangalia hapa naona nyinyi ni watu werevu. So sitafafanua vitu sana. Nikipitia hivyo najua mnashika maneno. An investor is what I'll talk about later because it's an area that I really enjoy. But the difference between this business person and an entrepreneur and this investor, what's the difference? In most cases, an investor will do, or the money for the investor will fetch them money passively. Is where you don't wake up in the morning to go check how your shop is doing. That's somebody else's business. You put in your money there, it's doing something for you. That is the bare, using superlatives, that is the top line definition. I want to talk about just a few basics because I've started many businesses also. Just some basics we may note here, and especially those who said they are huge business people. I saw your ads. You said you are doing very well in business, but for now, it is in the mind. Just for now, it is in the mind. One of the basic, I have seen it is important. As you start a business, you don't start a business because the other person started. You start a business because there is a gap. Gap may be in terms of demand. Gap may be in terms of geography. It could be the same product, it is somewhere else, but it's not yet in a geographical area that you are seeking to establish. That could also be a gap. Value creation. You can make money faster through creating value than through extraction. Many times you want to do business to extract money from people's pockets. And that is why you realize, and especially in a church setup, when you do business, you want people to sympathize with you because you go to the same church to buy you a product for that reason. That is not a reason enough. Just because I know you and you are my relative, you ought to create value. It is me who should be looking for your product. You shouldn't overconvince me simply by appealing to the soft side of how we know each other. That means there are some victims here. The other thing, bookkeeping. These things, they sound very banal. They sound easy. Bookkeeping. There is a story I keep giving all the time, and I'll give it. There is a time, me and my siblings, tukaenda nyumbani. Of course, we have a cow, like all of you in Mashinani. Or we had. So my mother anatembea Nairobi, siwezi lala hapa, nani atakamua ng'ombe? All the time anaumwa na mgongo, nini? Ng'ombe. So siku moja tukaenda, kamwambia madheka hapa chini, kuja na kalamu. Hebu tuone hii ukulima yako inakufikisha wapi? Unapeleka kwa dairy how many liters? These liters. Okay. Ukiendea, unapeleka dairy, then unaendea chakula ya ng'ombe kwa dairy. Hata hiyo arrangement iko hapa Nyeri. So you are given the net after wametoa chakula. Hiyo net unalipa mfanyikazi mwenye alikusaidia siku 2-3. Na unalipa pahali umekoboa you have leased some land for napier grass. After we did the math, we realized, you know, I'm using that as a businessman. This is a businessman, a farmer, in you can say now in agro processing or something like that, to sound sophisticated. Now, after kufanya hesabu, we realized the M-Pesa we sent home to the mother, to my mother, we don't send her money. We said what? We said the cow. Only that we use her phone. Because after doing that math, it taught me one thing that we all do, especially owners of small businesses. We never track our progress. So we never know whether we are timing or we are making progress. And the best way to do that is to use data. Data could be in terms of number of customers served, in terms of bottom line. Me, I like looking at bottom line. After all is said and done, it is not if you are a person doing oil, your business is not to fuel other people's cars. Your business is to make money. In economics class, we say it is not out of the benevolence of the baker that we enjoy our daily bread. It is out of their selfish interest to make money that we get Ken Blessed coming to our local shopping center every day. And in the economic interaction, selfishness is what bites the economy. You buy a matatu there seeking to make money, and me, I open a hardware seeking to make money. That interaction of the market is what creates the economy. So as you start your small business early enough, track progress so that you actually know whether you are overstaying in a redundant area for too long. Market. Many times we are limited by what we know in the mind hapa. But do you know now with internet, there is a lot you can do. You look at market, whatever product you come up with, and please, especially those whose businesses are in the mind, polish your ideas slightly further. Don't just do a business. You know, kuna business tu yani unafanya unaona, you need to think deeper. Especially those who have not yet risked or staked their money. Use more time to think than start. So that you first of all think about the market. The market may not be limited to where you already know and can see with your eyes. Study. I'm not saying you hire professionals to do that. Do basic, even with the internet. Those who are already doing business and you have some capital, focus on there is something I keep thinking about, and I also do. Look for businesses whose barrier of entry is high, almost blocked. The highest margins are in businesses that have got high barrier of entry. Barrier of entry may be in terms of knowledge. Barrier of entry may be in terms of capital. For example, if you had 2 billion shillings in Kenya now today, and you are talking about building a real estate in terms of flats, me, I wouldn't, because everyone can do that. For example, if you look at banking in Kenya, yes, the core capital was increased. It has been 1 billion shillings. But do you know there are so many Kenyans with that kind of money? That is already a niche where the barrier of entry is too high. So even if there are like 40 banks, they operate like oligopolies. And that is why you realize in Kenya, unless it is totally run down, few banks make losses. I'm just making that as a CASA. Look for a business with a higher barrier of entry so that you can enjoy longer margins or bigger margins. This is the other thing I want us to really interrogate. In my village, just like yours, my former teacher retires. The first thing they do is to buy a matatu. Or, hapo kwa shopping center yetu, anajenga hapo. Pesa ya retire. Karibu wote. What am I trying to say? Those businesses are good. They are good because they facilitate movement and they facilitate trading. But probably even my brother and sister in the same industry, there is much more they can do around there. What am I trying to say? Kenya is also a plot country. Yani kama huna we measure your success by how many plots you have. Maybe we'll talk about that later. Nikienda kumaliza. By the way, I'm almost finishing. Now, allow me now these minutes, because I can see here, next time, this one here, this is the lead sponsor. We would want in the next few years to come, the owner of this lead sponsor will be from this hall. And therefore allow me the remaining minutes, even if you do not understand what I'm saying, and I only talk to 2 people who will do that, I'll be satisfied. So if you do not understand the things I'll be saying, uniwie radhi. Because I would rather talk to 1 table who may actualize, become this, than talk to all of you and start small dots of businesses. And because we have brain and capacity to all be here, let in the next few years, there'll actually be an auction in this hall, all of us bidding to be this. I'm talking about how we must fashion ourselves in this hall to move from being net worth of 500,000, net worth of a millionaire, and because all wealth is granted by God, that we also break that ceiling. Those figures we hear of billionaires, we also aim. And number 1, moving from that comfort, I'm trying that we move from that comfort of being a dealer for Oilibia or for Total, to being the Total yourself. That's what I'm trying to say. From being a dealer of Safaricom to being a competitor. That's the kind of thing I'm trying to talk about. Mumeanza kuenda chini mnauliza sasa huyu mtu ni vitu gani hizo? When you want to move to that level, you do not own 100% of your business. There is no billionaire in the entire world who owns 100% of the business they are associated with. None. Mark Zuckerberg, in terms of Facebook, in fact, let me just to be precise, Jeff Bezos owns 12.7% of Amazon. Elon Musk owns 13% of Tesla. Bernard Arnault, the one for Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, is is the richest man in France actually. He owns 46% of LVMH. Warren Buffett, the renowned investor of Berkshire Hathaway, owns only 16% of Berkshire Hathaway. Larry Ellison, the one for Oracle, owns 35% of Oracle. Bill Gates, as I talk to you now, all of you know Microsoft is owned by Bill Gates. He owns less than 1% of Microsoft. Coming to Kenya, when you ask somebody who owns Cooperative Bank, they tell you Muriuki, the CEO. He is actually from here, Nyeri. He owns less than 5% of Cooperative Bank. But what is 5% of Cooperative Bank? A bank with a market cap of around 20 billion Kenya shillings. 5% means he is going to over 6 billion Kenya shillings. 5%. Now you with your 100% of your business, how much is it worth? There is a friend of mine who is also my mentor. Can you tell me by a show of hand who owns Equity Bank? By a raise of hand, tafadhali. I'll pay something for that. Naona wakikuyu ni wengi hapa mkono. Who owns Equity Bank? Monga. Very good. He is also a good friend of mine. So hata nikimkute hapa, he will not be offended. Somebody else who owns Equity Bank? Yes? Mwangi. Can you start? Sitakuita hapa. Najua public speaking, you can't ambush somebody. Who owns Equity Bank? Please rise up, my sister. Who owns Equity Bank? Monga. You said Peter Monga. Now listen, my brothers and sisters. Mwangi, the CEO of Equity Bank, owns 5% of Equity Bank. And all of you told me he is actually the owner of Equity Bank. If you look at the financial statements of Equity Bank, you realize the top shareholders of Equity Bank are not Kenyan. They are fads, including Norwegian fad. Do you know Peter Monga now owns less than 1% of Equity Bank? Now keep your 100% of your business. In business, and niliacha kuongea sasa mtu wa kuanza kiosk. Tumesema Mungu anatubariki to start chains. Is that so? Don't seek to own a fish pond. Seek to own just as rice of the ocean resources. Because the fish pond utaweka net, utasweep all your resources in there, and you have to give it months. Dive into the ocean. You are just given a slice, but that slice is worth much more than having many fish pods. And how do you do that? You have a business here. Mambo yote hata nimesema ya bookkeeping is combined. You have a business. You've started, let's say, of making yogurt, making organic soap, of making whatever you may think about. Now you are already progressing. There is so much market, but you can't satisfy. Now out of your bookkeeping, you realize your business is now worth 10 million shillings. But do you know what? You are already feeling very wealthy. And you cannot release. Hii kitu nimeanza na jasho sana. Mimi siwezi leta mtu wa kunisubua. A different person, what do they do? You look for an investor and bring you 5 million shillings into that business. It's not going to your pocket. But you give them 10% of that business. Now, if you receive 5 million shillings for 10% of that business, the valuation of that business becomes instantly 50 million shillings. You use this money to expand other markets, to expand your operations, to buy more machinery. Later on, you get another investor. Now you've already grown, even people are noticing your brand. They come in, they give you 20 million shillings, and you give them a 20% of your business. If a 20% of your business is valued at 20 million, instantly your business becomes 100 million. So even if the percentage continues to diminish, the aggregate continues to expand. Now, umepata kazi juzi, bank. You are now doing business very well as a contractor or anything else. Your first money, what do? Buy a plot. Then after buying a plot, build flats. Guys, my brothers and sisters, big companies like the one I quoted, including Equity Bank, including their own headquarters, is leased. They don't own. So you want to tell me, in your mind you have more CFAs, you have more actuaries, you have more financial advisors than Equity Bank? Old Mutual that bought even UAP here in Kenya. Old Mutual, you know it, is bigger in South Africa. Old Mutual, I saw in the Business Daily this week, they have put up for sale all their real estate assets in the entire East Africa. Wanasema, please come and buy. Hatutaki. Do you know, including that landmark tall building in Nairobi? Ile Christmas wanawekaga vitu hivi, mataa mingi tunaona huko. Hata hiyo wanauza. You can go buy. Maybe it's around 5 billion. Now, this is a company that is already divesting from real estate. And I am saying that with all due respect with my brothers who are in that business. I'm now talking to the buyer, not the seller. Other than the house that you live in, and other than the farm that you need, what is this plot you have in Kitegera, and the other one in Kamuru, and the other one in Kigajo, and the other one in Narumoro? Ni ya nini, ni ya kufanya nini? I am not saying that I am an oracle, but I just want to tell you, mimi sina pahali nachukuaga rent. Because you realize this business of building things, building, you are actually doing it for the satisfaction of the people who live in, not for you to make money. Because the return on investment on a flat, the return on investment is less than 8%. People will keep saying, oh, 12 or 15%, toa yote, and you give it time. It will oscillate and still settle down below 8%. That is the math even Equity Bank does. Badala ya kuown building, ati tunasema Equity HQ at all building of the 5 billion, mwaki ana order, 5 billion ata nikired micro loans. They'll give me an ROE of double digit, maybe 15%. Why can't I lend you the 5 billion mukiwa wengi? By end of the year, munilipe interest, let's say 18% of 5 billion is how much? 900 million. Why can't I give you, munilipe 900 million per year, then nilipe rent 400 million, then 500 million in faida? Let me ask you, when you build a house anywhere, including anywhere in Nyeri, your utility as an investor of that house is only the money you get, because you have no utility of living there. So your math must be very direct. Musianza hizo vitu kuwa sensational, owning a flat, nini. Let's be practical. You have 8 flats, manyumba mrefu hivi. Do you live there? So why did you build? To make money, is it? Is that the most optimal manner of putting your money? That should be your only consideration. Now, usileta emotions. Because if you live there, you can justify and say a utility of a house where you live cannot be justified by how much you are getting. You don't live there. You've not been there for 6 months. Your caretaker lives there more times than you. Then, watu hawapumui, kuna furaha tunacheka ingine, and munaonaga all my friends who build, they are always on phone. We mwaga mchanga, kakoto lile, there is always a kasturi hapo. Mahiga mashone mwaiga, kidimaithi Even if you want to own that flat, why can't you invest where you are getting double digit? After getting that double digit, wait for your brother angangane na simiti kuibiwa, angangane na nini. Wewe ukipata ROE yako ya 18%, after 5 years, through the faida peke yake, uende ununue akuwe amechoka on your behalf. Fanya hesabu, my friend. The other thing is that you do not need to use your money all the time. I do a lot of mentorship for university students in my office. And when they come, everyone, when they want to start a business, it is ni kama kamanyu kanapeanwa pahali. Sasa nikimaliza kuongeleza hivi na venye nimejikakamua leo, hata siongei siasa ati ni juu ya biashara. Then nikitoka hapo, unajua utaniuliza aje, okay, umeongea vizuri, where do you get capital? That is the question that is almost resonates every time. Nitatoa wapi capital? Na mimi wacha nikuulize, capital ya kufanya nini? Because that is the what you need to answer. All that, when you get somebody asking you, nitatoa wapi capital, hana idea. Because if you have a very well polished idea of a business, believe you me, you'll attract money. And money is not just borrowing. There are many models of financing a business, and they are in Kenya also, not just in the US. Facebook never became Facebook because it was Facebook. Facebook became Facebook because people like Peter Thiel is a venture capital, invested money in Facebook back then. By the way, fanyeni hii mathematics. Peter Thiel invested in Facebook $500,000 and got 2%. Wacha niende pole pole ndio mupate what I'm trying to say. And the other point I talked about 100% of the business. Peter Thiel, there's something called venture capital, and there is something called private equity. There is something called angel investors. What do these people do? They come, uko na idea poa, which can be commercialized. They give you money to start, but other than being alone, you seed a stake in your company. You seed a stake. Stake means a shareholding. So you seed. Once you seed, so biashara ikianguka, you don't owe that guy anything. But if the business does well, they are part of that business. So Peter Thiel invested $500,000, got 2%. Just a few years later, Facebook got listed. After listing of Facebook, he sold 2/3 of the 2%. What an yoge pole pole hapo. This is a point I want you to understand. He had 2%. He had bought all of it, like to pesa ya Kenya. 500,000. Hata tuseme ni ya Kenya. 500,000. A few years later, Facebook got listed. He sold 2/3 of the 2%. At how much? $625 million. Now, what am I trying to say? If the Facebook founders never needed the money for Peter Thiel, Facebook would still be your 100% owned company now. It will not be the global company we know. The intersection of the idea and money is what creates a business. An idea with no money to start it is still a dream. The intersection must appear of this idea and money. And you haven't even tried. You are just saying, wanatuongelesha maneno ya biashara, tutoe capital wapi? You have not even asked anyone to give you capital. How do you know people are not willing to give you money and you have not asked anyone? And then mtu anauliza hapa, who are those venture capital? And those who are those PE? This is my answer. That is precisely also an opportunity for you. The fact that you don't know any venture capital or private equity in Nairobi or Nyeri is already an opportunity for you to be one. Why? Because here there are people, by look of the introductions that we got here, there are people who have 10 million lying in the bank. There is already a person here with 10 plots. That plot, what is it for? That money can work for you faster elsewhere. Start a venture capital. If you don't know one, you don't ask me. Nitawatoa wapi? It has already an opportunity for you. But they are there. I mean, you can use the internet. Now, this is something else I know about money and investments. And I think I had made some notes, sana spedi kurifa, but I didn't want to, I wanted to mention a few things precisely. In everything, let me paraphrase. Everything is buy low, sell high. Everything. Buy low, sell high. When you're talking about commodities, even manufacturing, there is one sentence I'm looking for. Now, you make profit. Just listen to this. You make profit at the point of purchase, not the point of sale. You do not make profit at the point of sale. Profit is made from the point of purchase. That sounds like investments, but it's also business. When you are a media house, what do you sell to us, especially at TV? You are selling something called eyeballs. People watching you. That is your product. So how can you buy cheap eyeballs and then you sell expensively in terms of your adverts, pricing? In business also, business that has inputs and outputs, you do not make money when you are selling the product. You make money when you are buying the inputs. When you squeeze to the lowest point possible, the buys, at that point you've already made your profit. But then all of us here focus, pesa unatengeneza ukimaliza kujenga hiyo kitu unajenga. No, money is made at the point of purchase, not at the point of sale. For you as a businessman, I mean. Then, I hope by now we already know, kuweka pesa kwa bank, hizo vitu zote, they are not for people in this hall. By now we already know that. Kiura, if I found you with 5 million shillings in your bank account, I'll tell your wife. For them to realize you are not as they think. I think by now you already know. When you have money, you just want to see, many times even me, when you make your first, let me not mention things, money a lot, but when you make your first that one, unaitaka bank, unaitisha statement. Ndio uone hapo chini imeandikwa nini, na pia kashia unamwambia hebu nisomea vizuri hapo chini. So I said narukaruka tu, nyinyi ni watu werevu mnashika maneno. All the people I know, by the way including myself somehow, a lot of money is made during crisis. Warren Buffett, the one for Berkshire Hathaway, ni mzee, me I'm thinking as a businessman you already know Warren Buffett. If you don't, itagogo baadaye. Warren Buffett saa zingine anakaanga na cash money, not for the reason that I gave for Kiura, but for this other point. Just waiting for the right time. Just waiting for the right time. So anakaanga na pesa. Like now if you Google Berkshire Hathaway holdings in cash, crazy amounts of money. Crazy. In hundreds of billions of dollars. What does he do? He has studied the markets. He has studied the economies very well. Like in the year 2002-08 financial crisis, his work was to deploy cash. Why are you deploying cash? There was a crisis. Financial crisis in the entire world. So what was happening? Companies were collapsing. So Warren Buffett, he was happy. Companies were begging him to buy them at any price. So he bought up a company like Bank of America. They merged with another one which was called Merrill Lynch, became BOA Merrill Lynch, bought them for nothing. Another one. So, and he keeps saying, and this is a point you need also when you are investing, when everyone is very greedy, be fearful. And when everyone is very fearful, be greedy. Because we operate in herd mentality as human beings. For example, now, I'll mention something about the NSC, Nairobi Securities Exchange. There was a time I was buying some shares there. Guys were ordering, even my friends, I could tell them, buy. Nunua hii share. Wanashindwa hii mtu. By then, stock market was dampened. Not just in Kenya, globally. By that time, even last year, the entire globe was a rate market. People were chasing after the highest rates, fixed income. So, very few people were paying attention to equities. Equities are shares. I'm just trying to say, when others are fearful, be greedy. When you see everyone is buying a treasury board, fixed income assets, because they are giving very high rates, economies are cyclical all the time. You wait where you need to wait. Wait by buying what they are not buying. And then when the reverse also happens. What am I also trying to say there? You think honestly. Because you are saying we are moving from M to B. M meaning? And B? Yeah. Vile sitaki kuongea such things. They may appear differently as a politician talking about that. Now, you want to tell me you want to move from M to B and you can't do basic analysis about your own money. Study markets, study economies. Do you know the time you invest in your day-to-day business? Running a business is very tedious. Tedious. You think about, I'm referring to my brother a lot because I was told what he does. Mafuta, ukienda short ya 3 bob ni hasara because that's all your profit. Every time you are laboring your mind to the extreme. You also need to invest some time learning, studying threads about the economies, how do economies operate for the last 20 years, so that you have a view of how is it likely to operate for the next few years. And you can do that. You don't need professionals to do all those things. You study Kenyan market, you study South African market, you study American market. You can always predict the next time you're having a financial crisis. Even if you are not very precise, you'll not be very far away. And those are opportunities to make money. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not for exam, it's for making money. When you have, now I'm talking about business people and entrepreneurs. As you continue growing, of course you must learn to use professionals. Umeanza biashara, uwezi ajiri hata accountant. HR kuajiri, HR is your wife and you are the CEO. There is always a premium they bring, and especially structuring your business to be a corporate. Stop running a business. Start running a corporation. A corporation where, even if I needed to invest in your business, there is something I can fall back to as data. But you also need to be very obsessed with success. If those of you who like reading, I would challenge you, look for the autobiography of Elon Musk, the one written by Isaacson. I think he's called Isaacson. Those who can read. And you realize, my friends, those people, like now he's worth for over 400 billion US dollars. 400 billion US dollars. US dollars. US dollars, 400 over. US. When you read that book, then you start realizing, hakuna vitu ati utaokota tu kwa jia. You have to have an obsession to succeed. Not just at the feeling. Some obsession so that unashikilia, and especially when you had already done your basic analysis and you know what you are doing is right, you have to have some obsession. And I've seen it across people. You read about the founders of Apple, Elon Musk, all those guys I'm mentioning, you realize you need to be obsessed to succeed. Decision making. There is something I want you to always have in mind. And especially I have seen it rife in investments. I've been in stockbroking since, for example, my first year in KU. So I've seen cycles of downs and ups. And I have seen in life, just as in business, just as in entrepreneurship, here you are all employers. Me, I'm not talking to you as employees anymore. Because you already decided, those who are in jobs, you are resigning soon. I think you agreed that a long time ago. Otherwise, you're in the wrong forum. You need to make, maybe a decade is 10 years. You need to make like only 4 strategic decisions in those 10 years. Instead of tiring yourself on a day-to-day decision making. When you are making a strategic decision, never afford to make a stupid decision. Use a lot of data. Use a lot of analysis. You don't need to do that every day. For example, in 10 years, you make 4 strategic decisions, you are good to go. But we tie ourselves and our mind making micro decisions that we have no time to think about making strategic big decisions. And those big decisions are what matters. Investors like the ones I mentioned, including Kenya, the decision, for example, Equity did in 2007. A company called the Nyoro'S Capital came, a private equity fund. They got 24.5% of Equity Bank. That strategic decision they made was more important than how the branch operates every day. Strategic decisions. A strategic decision of KCB Bank to go to DRC and buy a bank there instead of starting one from scratch. That needed a lot of decision making that is weighty, deep. That strategic decision making is more important than day-to-day running of KCB Bank. The strategic decision, let's say, of Brookside selling a stake to Danone, a French company, that decision making maybe is more important than the amount of milk they were processing every day, at that time. You need to make strategic decisions, but not in haste. Because once you make the right one correctly, then you can reap from it for a very long time. And of course, learn as much as possible. Very lastly, those who, I was at some place two days ago, and I made a confession which I want to make also now. Despite all the things I have said here, I have already told you, as a businessman, I mean, let's not cheat ourselves that we are here to do this, to create value. You are here to make money. So I'm talking in that length. You know, when you're marketing a house, oh, I want to make good living abodes for other people. You're there to make money, my friend. Out of that, me personally, I have made much more money passively than I have made money actively. And I'll give you one because it is public information which you have read. I see on Twitter, stima ikipotea munaanza maneno. Me, I have never even been to Kenya Power offices because I'm just a passive investor. Passive. I have never been there for the last I don't know how long. The last time I was there was in my capacity as an MP ya kufuata stima, in my first term. But this year, last year, the year of Kenya Power, you can go at your own time, was trading. Last year, a time like today, was below 2 shillings. 2 shillings. 2. Meaning, if you bought shares then, if you bought 1 million shares then, you would have spent how much? 2 million shillings. Yesterday, which was Friday, Kenya Power share, after dropping slightly, I know it still go somewhere up, was 13.5 shillings. 13 point? So how much is that? Your 2 million is how much? 37. No, you are 2 million shares. We say, oh yes, you are right. Your 2 million is? No, it can't be 7. Fanya hesabu, 2 million shares would have bought you 1 million. 2 million shillings would have bought you 1 million shares. 13 and a half. You know najua nikisema hii mnafikiria ni pahali it's real. Si vitu tunasomanga kama hizo nimewambia za Warren Buffett. This is real. Nyeri shares 3 months ago. Let me even use December. Nyeri shares in December was 1.06. Yesterday, let me say the high. Average for last week. Not too much. 3.5 shillings. I want you to do the percentage. Kenyan shares a year ago, a time like this, it was cheaper to buy one Kenyan share than it was to buy Peremende. It was maybe 3 point something shillings. As of yesterday, 9.7. It doesn't happen all the time. I'm not telling you at the Monday you go buy those shares. No. I am saying this. Some time back, I sat down, downloaded the financial accounts of Kenya Power, read, and I realized, ni mimi tunajua hii mambo ama ni nini? Because I saw a gold mine. I am going back to what I told you. You never move from M to B at the evil. You have to also spend some time. I mean, if, for example, working for a whole year, for a whole month, in that institution, you earn 100,000 or 50,000 per month. If you earn 50,000 to work for a whole month, then it means to move from that M to B. It also calls you to also engage your mind into running and data analysis. It's not so complex anyway. So I started and I saw a company had over 150 billion in sales. That is revenue. Assets were like 320 billion that time. The valuation of that company was just 3 billion in the market. Then I decided I am not consulting anyone. I am buying vile tunasemanga hapa kwetu takeri. Yeah. Yani hutaki kufikiria, mimi hapa nimeona iko kitu na sitaki kujua, mimi nanunua. Last year, I scrutinized Nyeri books. I realized the company is valued by that time, was valued by the market at only at 6 billion shillings. The entire company. Because when you're buying shares, me, I don't advocate for trading. I advocate for investing. Invest like you're investing in a company, not trading shares, no. So I see a company worth 6 billion, but they had declared profit that year of 5 billion net profit. Can you just imagine? Ile story tulikuwa tunasema ya ploti. Ploti will take you 10 years to recover your money. That's what they say, 10 to 15. Now here there is a company which was worth 6 billion, but net profit for 1 year was 5 billion. Then I scrutinized further. I saw their cash and cash equivalent. These things are online. You can actually check. And that you don't need to be an accountant. I'm not one. I read and saw their cash and cash equivalent by then was 35 billion shillings. Do you know what that means? And then I read further, they have no loan. Hi. Then it meant to me, I can buy this company at 6 billion. If it becomes mine, the cash and cash equivalent alone, I get the 6 billion and pay the people who gave me. The whole money, the 30 billion remains free money. Anniversary Towers, which is owned by them, becomes my building. Maybe I'll have the top 3 floors as my office. Reinsurance Plaza becomes my building. And then I started, they are in 83 markets. I never needed anyone to tell me anything. I saw an opportunity there. So what am I trying to tell you? There are many opportunities you can make money passively. They don't happen all the time. That's why I talked about study how the markets move, how the economies move, so that you know when to jump. For example, in Kenya, we have had a bullish market. Shares in Aeda Jew. But they don't go up like this. They go EV. So it's your work now. Go check the companies of your interest. Study. You'll see a lot of opportunities. Let me use 2 brands you know. KCB Bank, for example. KCB Bank is valued by the market at around 170 billion shillings. The valuation of the entire KCB. Last year, they made a profit of 60 billion. So if you bought KCB, it's your bank, it will take you 2.5 years to recover all your money using only net profits. Equity Bank, for example, also. Equity Bank is valued by the market at around 211 billion shillings. But their first half year up to 30th June, was 31 billion shillings. So they will likely make 62 billion 1 year profit. So it will take you, if you bought the entire company, less than 4 years. Proti Narumoro, Proti Kamuru, Proti wapi, hiyo Proti alafu unapigiwa simu, muduraita maiga haha. I mean, then you have a home in hapa Nyeri, another one in Nairobi. Now, because you have money, you also want a home in Mombasa to be sleeping there over Christmas. And then the entire year you have a caretaker maintaining that plot for you. Thank you very much. May God bless you. Nimemaliza. Asante sana. You may sit. I know we are in a church forum, and therefore we can't talk politics. I just want to say one thing that is attached to the things I was saying, because I am an economist and I am grateful for that. There is one thing that is troubling my mind as a Kenyan on the economic front. And it's something, I am not saying it to accuse anyone. I'm saying it because it is important. If you read the central bank data, it shows that the Kenyan economy, we have now borrowed. Our national debt is now over 12.1 trillion Kenya shillings. For the last 3 years, our country has borrowed in excess of 3.5 trillion Kenya shillings. So I would want to request all of us as the leadership, and especially those who have the opportunity to make decisions in the executive. Let us serve our country with dedication. And let us not seek to give good narratives out there when the Kenyan economy is actually being teared down or torn down. We have borrowed over 3.5 trillion Kenya shillings in 3 years. President Kibaki borrowed 1.2 trillion in the entire 10 years he was president. And therefore we have borrowed 3 times in 3 years. We have borrowed 3 times what Kibaki borrowed in 10 years. That's the money Kenya has borrowed in the last 3 years alone. 3 times what Kibaki borrowed in 10 years. And in that money, I have not included other debts that Kenya has now become clever to borrow in the name of something called securitization. I have not mentioned even that. It therefore means the economy of Kenya is borrowing 100 billion every month. And every single day, when the lights go off, every day, every single day, Kenya is borrowing 3.4 billion every day. That we are borrowing in a minute. You can do the calculations and see. In an hour, maybe we are borrowing around 137 every 1 hour. I'm saying this because we are now headed to the elections. And what governments do, they focus more on re-election, and we forget that we have a country to lead after the elections. And what that means is that every time we are nearing elections, we start having something called fiscal expansion. Because maybe there is nothing much to be seen for the past year, then in basically 1 year, we want everything to be seen. And therefore, what do? We become reckless in borrowing. Kenya is there now. That now our debt is 12 trillion Kenya shillings. I want to request that we do not have to put our country in that kind of pedestal in terms of borrowing. Kenya has always had development for the many years, but we never had to borrow that much. President Kibaki did a lot of development. He borrowed only 1.2 trillion for 10 years. Where is the 1.2 trillion we are borrowing every year going? To make the matter worse, anything you see with your mouth, with your eyes, sorry for that. Maybe the mouth is what is also being used somewhere. So I shouldn't say sorry. Let me paraphrase that. Everything you see with your eyes happening in Kenya now, in terms of development, what you can see, for example, the expansion of this Keno Marwa Road, is not even part of the 12 trillion borrowed. Is another loan on the side called fuel levy securitization. Everything else you see in Kenya in terms of development, like even the Talanta Stadium, is also not part of the 12 trillion debt. That is another debt, securitization of the sports fund, where we borrowed 46 billion and will be paying 100 billion in interest rate alone after 15 years. Even the expansion of Nairobi-Nakuru Road is also not part of the 12 trillion we have borrowed. That is NSSF money being used as a PPP to build that road. I request those who are in government, you have already borrowed 1.2 trillion every year. And even what we can see with our eyes is actually not part of that borrowing. Please, kuweni na huruma ya nchi ya Kenya. Even as we preside over the affairs of our country, let us be, tujue kwa akili zetu ya kwamba there is Kenya after elections. Let us not run our country in terms of overheating it. We must avoid to become like Sri Lanka. We must avoid to become like Ghana. We must avoid to become like Ethiopia. We must avoid to become like Zambia in the recent years. Because Kenya is a strong country with internal resources. This issue of profligate borrowing must come to an end if we really care about this country. Asanteni sana, Mungu awabariki.
Watu wa Maguta.
Thank you. Let's give another round of applause to our chief guests. Asante sana.